We are live. The meeting is being live streamed.
Woohoo! The meeting is live
And
streamed.
we are live.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on the PPD webinar, Up All Night.
Well, I'm waiting. There we go. I've got my screen sharing software is on. Hello, everybody out there in Facebook land. I see Rob just went live with Facebook. I'm just getting the chat window up here, and so I do have the chat window open. So if you have any questions, by all means, throw them in chat. And I want to get you. There we go. And I've got Facebook over here. Because so if everybody was excited tonight to see a PowerPoint presentation, you are going to be very, 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 very disappointed because I did not do one. So if you like xLights, tonight we're going to do xLights. Before we begin, I want to give a shout out and a nod and a notification that one of our close friends, Lowell Hake, has passed away. He was a fellow lighter, and he was a PPD club member for a good long time and a good friend. And while his show's gone dark, heaven has gained an angel that is very bright. So prayers and thoughts to the family, and just wanted to share that with everybody. So tonight, what we're going to start with, doing a kind of a walkthrough, a review. Pretty much every slider is open to debate here. And for example, as we get into doing the Roto Zoom tab, I'll just go ahead and start sharing screens because I haven't done that. And we'll go ahead and start by saying thank you for joining us for the 2nd May 2022 PPD webinar. This is on the Roto Zoom tab in xLights. And what we'll do is we'll go through pretty much all the effects settings. I'll show you a couple of examples at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat room, and I will try to answer those as we go. At the end will be an open Q&A session. So if you are watching live on Facebook, by all means, jump in the room if you'd like to. If you have questions after we've completed the webinar, we will stop the live recording on Facebook, and we'll head into the room and just do the Q&A here in the PPD Zoom room. So by all means, thank you for watching, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So one of the things that I don't really see a lot of people talk about, period, is the Roto Zoom tab. In the past year, I think I've talked about maybe all of the buffer, a number of the effects, but we haven't talked about the layer setting box where the Roto Zoom is. And what is the Roto Zoom? The Roto Zoom is functionality in the layer setting that allows you to individually grab a hold of one effect and manipulate it via an XY axis. And there are Z rotations as well, but don't think of this as three-dimensional. Even though it feels like it should be, it doesn't work exactly that way with a 3D prop. So don't think about it in that manner, but think about it more as, and you'll see it as we demonstrated how it kind of unfolds itself. So in its default state, we have basically a preset dropdown. And what xLights developers did was it saved a number of preset quick grabs, if you will, so you don't have to constantly remember certain things. What's nice about the preset is this is where you can begin to learn about how you can utilize the different abilities that are found inside Roto Zoom. The challenge though is that you're not just going to pick up one thing tonight. There's a number of things that you're going to pick up tonight. And the reason for that is quite simply, xLights can do some things, but if you don't push yourself to learn other things, like for example, value curves, to pick up some value curves and use those, if you don't utilize those, you're leaving a lot on the table. So again, a lot of this is just playing around and having fun with things. So that's what we're going to start with. So just a basic default setting for xLights with the Roto Zoom is no functionality at all. But if we move on over, we have what's called the presets. Now the presets, there are a number of these. If we click on these, we click the drop down arrow, you see right away you have none or a reset. So if you went crazy and put all kinds of changed numbers in these, and then you place another effect down and they have the same effect down, and you don't want those, you can clear them out very easily just by hitting the clear or the reset. So none reset resets it back to what the default of Roto Zoom tab is. It doesn't reset the default of what the effect is. It just resets the Roto Zoom tab itself. So second, we have the clockwise. And what this says is 1 revolution clockwise. And so if we select this, xLights will make preload all the settings in order to take 1 full clockwise rotation onto and apply it to your effect. The next one would be exactly the same, only in the opposite direction. We have a Z rotation that is counterclockwise, and you can select that easily there. One that's a little bit of fun to play with is the explode, and that's rather easy just to select and change. You can put rotate on there and then go right to explode. Another one is collapse. And this is basically zoom out from full screen to nothingness, basically. You could use this kind of as a transition from one effect into another. And again, notice that we're using value curves, or value curves were created in order to fill in these spots here so that it would give that appearance of zooming out or just shrinking to 0 size. So next we have explode with spin. Again, this is another preset. Explode with spin is nothing more than the clockwise spin, but with a different zoom preset to it. So you can go with a value curve that goes from 0 to 1, and that takes it it gives it the spin point and the ability to grow it out. So that's another transition that you might consider if you're doing some fancy stuff. This here is spin with accelerate. So basically, this is a value curve that was placed on the Z rotation. So, and I'll show you this one. This is rather interesting. So this is something where you can start to see, oh, they did something that was a little bit neat. How did they make it accelerate? And the way that they did that was they created this value curve that was started at 0 and it ended at 1. And so you can adjust this. You can edit these individually and click OK. So now your spin with accelerate just got a little bit faster than what the default was. So that gives you something to play with or to learn about so that you can begin applying those lessons as well to your own programming. And I believe the last one is shake. So if we come over here, shake is really interesting, and it's not really hard to understand what's going on. Basically, as we get into these, you'll see how they're done after we explain what each one of these sliders do. But this was a really interesting idea for a shake. You know, you're going from one end of the value curve down to the other end, and this is all done by a vertical offset that was used with a standard sine value curve, and they just placed it halfway between the two. And you could play with it a little more. You could give it some more bumps. You could make the amplitude a little bit more, and you can click OK. And now it's a little more drastic, if you will, to create that. So let's get into the sliders, and let's just walk through this so you can actually physically see what's going on with with xLights whenever it uses these different sliders and functions. So just again, the basic effect of xLights when you use the default setting of RotoZoom, all I've done here is I've simply taken, and then we're working with the Z rotation slider. All I've done is taken and I'm just sliding it. So keep in mind there's 360 degrees in every turn. But whenever we turn this, when we move this slider, the slider only goes from 1 to 100. So it's not 360 degrees in that aspect on here. So keep that in mind. So 25% of the way through a turn out of 100, 25% would be the number 25. So if we go from 1 to 25, you'll see that now it is, well, 26 is close enough. That's almost straight up and down, right? So it's not kind of hard to understand what's going on whenever you're using this rotation slider. The challenge though is you've activated the rotation, but you haven't given it a number of rotations. So I just placed another example of the same thing, just in a different format. But the Z rotation and the Z rotations plural, not plural, but multiple rotations. In other words, yeah, I guess it's plural, not possessive. The plural version where you have, if I zoom in here, there's an S that's on the end of rotations, the Z. So the rotations S line, this line here is going to tell xLights how many times do you want this effect to rotate at. Well, we can grab this and turn and give this a big number, 20 times or whatever. But what xLights is saying, hey, wait, do this 6.6 times at 18. We haven't given it a value curve. So that's how the Z rotations knows when it should be doing something, is whenever we give it a changed value or a value curve to curve it from one number to another. So if we click on this here and we go ahead and add, I'm just going to come up here. This is a value curve dropper. I'm going to grab it and place it right on top of this here. And I'm going to add a Z rotation onto here. We're just going to go one time. So basically what I'm saying to xLights is, if I open up this value curve, I'm basically saying start at the 67% of a turn and move it from the 67% down to the 33%. Now, there's another way to think about this. If I did, as I said earlier, 25 and we go to 50, there's exactly 25% of a turn. And if I click OK, you're going to see it turn from the 25% location to the 50% location. And it's actually going to end up upside down. So this is what RotoZoom can start doing for you if you have an understanding of the percentage, meaning 0 to 100, or the percentage of turn. But as soon as we take that away, it goes back to whatever it was initially set to. If we have a partial rotation in there, meaning we can have any number in here that we want. Well, it has to be a point. It can to the 10th decimal place. That's it. It doesn't go to the hundreds. I don't think it does. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So so let's go ahead and just grab one of these pre-done value curves. We can tell it only go 0.2. Only go 0.6. Okay, what happens if we tell it to go twice? Once, twice, and it does it twice in a row during this time period that's found here in the timeline. That's xLights is running that effect twice on this rotation at this angle. So what if you change this? It wouldn't look so bad if you did this. So now you have this kind of, seesaw back and forth. So so that's your Z rotation and Z rotations plural sliders. These two are the most common that I use. I find very useful in pretty much every sequence I'm doing something with RotoZoom. So again, this was just a demonstration of you have to add a value curve to the Z rotation in order for any number for the Z rotations plural to activate. So these are just a couple of examples, like I said, and I actually did that over there, did the same thing. Well, very similar. I used a double sawtooth and only one time, where I had this 2 times before. So that's 4 times now. So yeah, you can get kind of crazy with this stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna, while I'm here, and I'll show this real quick here. You'll notice that anytime you turn something in the RotoZoom tab, that there's something going on called artifacting. And what artifacting is whenever odd things start to happen within the effect itself. And when this happens, it's usually due to the way it's been displayed through the effect. And so what xLights did, the creators did, was they added this ability to fix or correct this artifacting, and they call this zoom quality. So I don't want to go through the whole thing and not tell you this until later, but I wanted to share that with you. So you can get some really neat, interesting looks without changing the zoom quality. But if you're looking for picture perfect, everything needs to look real nice, go to the zoom quality and you can adjust it up and down to be much more fine or less detailed as you need it to make it look good for what you're working on. So from there, like here's that example again. Now you can see it's nice and cleared up. I only put on it what it needs. If it needs a 2 or a 3 or 4, that's what I put on it. So next, let's see. Don't see any questions yet. So next, what we have is our next set of sliders that are called the Z pivot point X and the Z pivot point Y. So these are a little bit hard to understand. I'm going to do my best to explain these. I typically don't play a lot with these, but there's a lot of fun that can be had with them. If I'm in a hurry doing something, usually I'm not, sometimes I don't spend as much time messing around with it. I find what I like and it does it, but you can get much more fine understanding of what the Z pivot point X slider does as we go kind of through this. So first of all it does is it moves the pivot point to which the rotation, the clockwise or counterclockwise rotation, whatever direction you set, will go into. So 50 is dead center and 25 would be slightly off. So if we change this to 25, that would be off to the 25 to the X point, and or you can go 75. You can go to anywhere you want, but this just moves the pivot point to the 25% area. And if we if we go over here, you'll notice that there's no movement until you put a value curve onto it. So this is your pivot point, and it's actually moving the effect around because you've added a value curve. So you can set it at a certain thing, and then you can add a value curve in this manner, let's say this, and then you can put a 1 on it, right? So that's one way to utilize this. But in this instance, what we've done here was we just put a value curve on here without adding any rotation to the Z rotation. We're just worried about these 2 sliders right here. So next, this is the Y pivot. So earlier on this one here, we said we went left and right. With the X-axis, we're going left and right with a pivot point. On this one here, we're going with the pivot point up and down. So what will happen is as we select the actual effect, you can see that from one point to another, it's moving in another manner. And then what if we do the combined usage of doing something on both of them? So in other words, you have the X going along its pivot point, and then you have the Y going along its pivot point, which is this kind of pre-made. This was a custom one. You could do anything with like a parabolic up or down, logarithmic. Let's see. I think that's a sine, no, or absine, decaying sine. There we go. So that kind of the same idea. So it does, you do have a lot of these value curves that are predetermined. You can also set them to music. You can trigger them with a music track or a timing track, or you can create your own custom one where you want it to bounce at a certain time. So the value curves, and I've done a video on the value curves in the past. My recommendation is to go ahead and look on the PPD website. I've did a video. It's called "What's the Value in Value Curves." So that's one of the things that you can pick up after this if you need a little bit more supplemental to understand the value curves. That's another video. Brian asked a question. Going back to zoom quality, would you bump it up to a finer look for less dense props and matrices? That's a good question. So if we do kind of go back here, if I copy this and I paste this on a less dense matrix, and you can see here is the zoom quality of just turning it. And again, you only need to set it good enough to make it look as good as it needs to look. And I imagine that there's a penalty here whenever you hit the render button, but I don't know how heavy that penalty is for people. But you may not need as much. It all depends on what you're trying to do and how good you're trying to make it look. So good question, Brian. So let's jump back here to the pivot points combined that we were at. That's just one example. Here's another example, and this is where you actually utilize a little bit of the Z rotation with a value curve and a 1 rotation. So all I did here basically is I set this as 1 revolution clockwise, which you can see it going in the clockwise direction, but you can see that the pivot point is now moving. We can make this pivot point be a little bit more drastic as it goes up and down the X pivot line or the pivot point. And we can also change where the Y pivot point is. So there's a lot of fun to be had to try to figure out different things. Again, there's the quality of zoom. You can edit those. Here's another example. Now, many of you may not know this, but the ripple effect using the square as a shape in the effect, the rotation that you find in the effect does not work with the square. It's like that for, I think, the triangle and a couple other things too. I think there was some coding issues that wouldn't allow it, but if you're utilizing the roto zoom, you can still take and rotate these effects and still have them looking good. In this instance, all I did was I went and gave it 1 counterclockwise, or no, that's clockwise rotation. And then I gave it a couple different pivot points and some value curves for it to be turned to pivot to as it was turning. Here is another example of bars with a slight counterclockwise movement. And I just gave it some different points. If there was something I was trying to swipe across and to do that, I wanted to cover certain areas of the matrix and I didn't want it to cover the whole thing, that'd be a way to do it. So the next slider that we'll move on to is zoom. And zoom's actually a lot of fun. And remember earlier I said whenever you do set the zoom quality, you can see that sometimes you get some interesting things, such as in this instance, I've taken the butterfly effect and I've reduced it in size to like 0.2. So I'm not using the whole panel to create the butterfly effect in the center. So basically I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have, like, maybe it's a picture frame. Maybe I have a butterfly effect with a picture frame around it. And so I placed this effect underneath of it. But then I was like, oh, what if I zoom the picture or zoom the on effect? When you zoom in, you're actually pixelating the effect. You're zooming in literally to the pixel size of the on effect. And when you do that, you might need to clear it up. So that's what the zoom quality would do or come in handy for. There's no value curve on that, by the way, because I don't think that anybody was ever under the impression that that might be something that might be valuable in programming. Kind of this was your way to fix the effect whenever it didn't look right. So here's something that I thought of while I was just messing around. If I lower the size of or make this smaller, the on effect, just make it smaller. I'm just reducing the size and I'm just creating that nice little picture frame around what I'm trying to do. And then I can do the same thing with this other on effect down below it, you know. But you can obviously do the same thing there. You could have a double background, a triple background. You know, just again, you're just learning to use the effect. You're trying to do some different things, and this is definitely a way to do it. The next thing, this is another thing, going kind of a throwback to what I said before. You're basically, this is 1 pixel that's zoomed in on this on effect, for example. So if I went and changed this to 1.2 zoom, you see this nice, neat little grid. Well, what if I go to 1.6? I have a lot more grids. What if I go to what if I go to 1.4? So this might be something that you want to try to create with your sequencing. Maybe you're playing around with something and that grid kind of works for you for something that you're doing. So just keep that in mind. That's something fun to play with. Now we'll move on to the rotation X and the pivot point X. So there's a number of things that you can use the rotation X for. The best way I can think about to explain this to you is, imagine you have a pancake on a flat grill in your kitchen or in your skillet and you're cooking pancakes. What the X rotation would be is if you took the pancake turner and slid it under the pancake and flipped it from left to right. That's basically what's happening here. So we have this X rotation. The 0 stands for I'm on the very left side. This is the way xLights intends for us to see this effect without manipulating it at all. But if I decide that I want to take a pancake turner and flip it over, I would go from 0 to 50 because that's 1 flip. And now you can see how it goes. It gets real close together and then we flip it over and now it's upside down. And it still looks like, in this instance, this is the plasma effect. It still looks exactly the same, but it's only, we're looking at it from the back side of the matrix now. Like this is the back side. And if you kept going, if you keep going, it's going to flip over and now you are back to where you were. So in this respect, this slider is slightly different than the above sliders, which we were using 1 to 100. Now we're actually physically using the 360 degrees of the X rotation and pivot points, or excuse me, the X rotation and the Y rotation when we get to it. So both of those work on the degree used. So halfway through, if we go halfway through, this is the reverse. 180 is flipped over left to right. And so that's kind of how xLights sees this. One of the things that you can do is you can put value curves on the rotation X, and you can see it right here with the value curve set to a from high to low, in other words, or low to high, that is, excuse me, from a value of 0 to 360. So basically you're telling xLights to manually flip this thing twice. If you only wanted to flip it once and just see the back end of it, we would change this to 180 degrees. And there's from the beginning to end. So that's something that you could do. You could, again, you can do custom value curves to sustain it if you wanted to sustain for a specific period of time. xLights will allow you to do that with the value curve. Then the other thing with the X rotation is obviously the pivot point. So we already know that we know that the rotation, whenever the rotation is fully displayed, that means it's the pancake is flat on the counter. But as we move it closer to between either the center here versus or halfway through, all we're doing, oops, I'm sorry, move it over here, we're actually making it skinnier. Now, the pivot point was here in the center, but if we move it over, we can see that if we fully extend or fully detract, and let's put the on effect on underneath here with a different color. So maybe that doesn't help exactly as I thought it would. Let's go to the 3D. Okay. So we have a black, well, there we go. We have green underneath of it. As you can tell, there's green underneath of it. And if we change that rotation, you can see what happens to the effect as you turn the rotation. If we go back and add that value curve back in, and we only give it like, no, let's do this one here, 1 to 180. And then this is the pivot point. The point that it's pivoting is at the 83% mark, or we can have it flip. If it's in the middle, now it's a pancake flip, at the 50% mark. This is a pancake flip. It's the same thing on both sides, but it just looks like it's clapping. So that's something to be thought of too. But you can also give it a value curve pivot point where it's going to pivot at different places, or it'll move. You can get really kind of crazy and grab some of the very oddball type value curves that are built into xLights and throw them on there as well. So that's one example. Here's another example. I think I was already doing that. This rotation, it's going to flip partially using the sawtooth, and therefore it's never fully opening up, so it doesn't cover the whole screen. Just an interesting way to begin understanding what you can do with the X and Y. Now, moving on to the Y is identical to the X. The only thing is that we're just changing the direction from the top to the bottom versus the pivot or direction from left to right. So if you were to take your pancake turner and scoop it underneath of your pancake, and you did it from the left side and you flipped towards you, that would be a flip down, or from top to bottom. So it's a distinction. That would be your flip on the y-axis. And so that's what you see here. You can see on the y-axis that the flip this is normal. This is the way butterfly is supposed to look. And then the closer we get to the 50 mark, or the closer we get to the 90-degree mark, the closer we are to where it's flat, like where it's only literally one line. So we're looking at right now the butterfly if it were on a vertical plane directly in your eyeball line of sight. So that's kind of cool. And now if we keep going, we see that the tip of the butterfly is all the way up here in the top left corner. And if we go back to the way it was, butterfly natively goes to the bottom left instead of the top right. So that's what the Y rotation does for us. And it kind of just does those flips for us. Now, that's obvious that you can throw a value curve on there and have a little bit of fun with that. I decided to do something a little different with this one. This is a new functionality in xLights. Thanks to Keith, he added this probably back in version 0.6 or 0.5. He added this as an additional functionality of the color curve. And you can change your color curve based on what colors are here and have it go into a circular motion. There's a lot of little things that it will do. It doesn't animate, it just changes how xLights sees the quote unquote the on effect when you're using the color curves. So that's the effect we're using. We're using the on effect, and we've changed it using some color curves. And that's just an interesting way to see it that you may not have seen it yet. But in this instance, we're going to play with the Y pivot point. And so at this point, we can say dead center would be 50. If we move it up, if we want it to go up or pivot at the top end, we move it higher to the right or lower to the left, and it pivots on the lower end of the percentage of the Y axis. So again, here's an example of having a Y rotation with a value curve, and it's going from the pivot point where it's kind of looks like it's kind of folding itself over, but it's going back up. So it's folding and back up. We could use sawtooth and do a little bit more. It could be a little faster. Looks like it's kind of laughing at you. Maybe it's a sock puppet. And there's your Y pivot point. So that's basically everything that I can really show you as far as the Y rotation and the X rotation, all of the RotoZoom. In this next section, I would love to say that I can complete pretty much everything in this area, but I found a bug tonight. And if you're in the Pixel Pro Displays, Pixel Pro University Facebook group, what I learned tonight, there was a bug with the final part, which is the application order down here on the bottom left-hand side. Now, I'm not poking at anybody. This isn't meant to be mean or anything, but I just found it. So what the application order is supposed to do is it's supposed to say there's an order at which the X, the Y, and the Z are rendered. And the standard default is X, Y, Z in X, Y, Z order. So X, Y, and then I believe Z. I believe that's what it's supposed to be meant for. So if we change this, if we copy and pasted it and changed it, so it's the same effect, same exact effect, and we copy and paste it and we change it, this would be, let's say, the X, Z, Y. So it has the same kind of properties, the same settings, but that is how it's rendered. But what I found, here's where the bug comes in. As soon as I switch to something else and I click back on it, it seems that xLights doesn't want to hold the setting for the application order. So it's really kind of hard to demonstrate all 6 different options stacked on top of each other, plus xLights will crash for me whenever I tried to change it on the fly using the scroll wheel on the mouse. So unfortunately, I have to kind of end it there as far as the functionality. So I did put a bug report into the GitHub. That's I asked earlier if Scott or Kevin had jumped in tonight, but that is definitely an oddball of a bug, and it just kind of resets and it doesn't remember that that's what we set it to. And also that if I don't hit suspend render, sometimes if I scroll through these, what will happen is xLights will freeze on me. So, but if I hit the suspend render, it doesn't seem to freeze. But that's basically the in total, the RotoZoom tab. Those are the functions that it has, and it's going to be a little bit of work to play with it to figure things out. It's not 100% intuitive if you're not used to using value curves. So in these kind of examples I'm going to show, it's not like any of these are hard to come up with. I'm combining a couple other things that I already do. And basically I just decided to have a little bit of fun. What can I do with the RotoZoom tab if I did a little bit of neat little things. So one of the things here that I did was I did a zoom, and I kind of zoomed out a little bit. It's at 0.4 zoom percentage. And I set up the quality so that it's nice and filled in and looks good. And then I didn't give it any rotations. I didn't do anything special except for the Z rotation. You see it rocking back and forth because it wants to go up one way and keep going, but it doesn't because it has to come back down, and I have it doing it twice. So it gives it this nice little rocking motion. And then in order for me to do this, again, I kind of copy and pasted these, and all I did was I rotated the buffer a little bit and chose a couple different buffer settings, and that was something fun to do. Over here in this section, this is something, again, I was just playing with. A lot of these I just play with. You don't discover anything in xLights. It's harder to come up with what you're imagining in your head with xLights than it is to just go have fun with xLights and play. And all I did here was I grabbed the curtain effect. I set the curtain effect to open then close, and I set it with the sag width of 10. And I only have it going at the normal speed. This is the default speed. It's not repeating, it's just doing one iteration of the curtain. And I came down here and I made it zoom out, and then I made it zoom back in. So if I look at this, I made it zoom out from 1 down to 0.5. So it's full size, but it's also going to half size and then back to full size. So it's kind of like it's breathing. It's doing one zoom out, one zoom in. I did add some zoom quality. I did manually change these zoom rotations to 12 or 13 the 12 it should line up directly across. It doesn't do it exactly. If I could get 12.5 on here, if I could get a point, if I could get a decimal to the 10th added, that would be able to make it look exactly even across the board. So it would appear to be a direct connection. But another thing I did here was I just on the X rotation, I gave it a sawtooth, and on the pivot point, I'm moving the pivot point from a higher point to a slightly lower point, and that's where you see it's moving in a direction. And then I did the same thing here with the Y rotation, and I left it pivot at the 50%. And again, I'm just playing, and all I did was I copied this one effect and I pasted it 4 times, and I gave it all the quarter buffer. So I went here, I right-clicked, I went to a quarters buffer in the top left, and then I just rotated them. So I have a rotation of 180 degrees. There's clockwise 90 degrees and counterclockwise 90 degrees. So again, just having some fun doing things that I already did with xLights, but mixing it in with the rotation. And even though it's not physically rotating, and to be sure, the curtain effect is very useful for displaying something or hiding something, because you're opening the curtain or you're closing the curtain. Now you have the curtain effect doing something that is an actual instrument, and it's creating a look with multiple versions of itself. This here is the shader effect. This is the candy wrap shader. You can download that from the download section on the shader library. I did the same thing. I used the same quarter buffer here, and I copy and pasted it. And all I'm doing is I'm just using the Z rotation. I'm doing a Z rotation going from the 0 or the 1 point to the 50% mark, or 50% of the rotation. So you can see it's rotating half the way, and then it's rotating back half the way. So that's what that value curve looks like. It looks like it's going up and around and then back around. And I'm having it do it once. Now we can bulk edit these, we can select these, and we can have it do it 3 times, and it's going to look really spastic when we do. But there's a neat little way for you to play with the rotations. Now there's something else I did here. Where is it at? Oh, up in the shader settings. I added a value curve to the hue, and I bulk edited this sawtooth, and we could make it a little bit less dramatic by bulk editing these back to something a little more calm. Although that hue, we could just take the hue off and just reset them all to what the default was, or whatever it was set to before. So there's something fun to play with. The shaders can do it. Now the shaders sometimes will fill in all the pixels, even though the buffer tab here is only using the corner. It's filling it in the whole way, but it's only doing it in that quarter. So sometimes you'll have where the buffer is not seen. You can't see, it's not utilizing those pixels that are there, but this one is. So just a lot of little fun things that you can have with the Roto Zoom. Here's something, I was just playing. I decided I'll delete this one off here. This is something a little bit neat. All I did was basically I took the single strand effect, I put a dual chase on it. So it's going 1.5 times. And I put a 3D fade on it. We can make the chase a little longer. We can add some sparkles to it, have a little bit of fun with it, right? And then I came down here, and all I did was on the X rotation. This is all I worked with, was the X rotation, and I gave it this basic ramp up down. That's the default in xLights, and then I did the exact same thing here, but I flipped it. So this is a ramp up down that was flipped. And I just used that flip button there. And so that's all I did. I created this. It looks like it's playing ping pong with itself, right? And then I just copied this and I pasted it. And I went over to the buffer and I rotated it 180 degrees. Oh, well, I didn't do 180 degrees, 90 degrees. And so there's something that you can play with that, you know, add a little bit more pizzazz to something that you're sequencing. Another one here, this was a little bit of fun. I did 4 layers here, and if I go back, I didn't do any rotation at all. I didn't use the buffer for this at all, and that was my goal. My goal was to, what can I do with one effect or 2 effects that are kind of similar, and I'll go ahead and delete these 2 here, and I'll show you. Well, I'll let you see what I did. I'll just do it one at a time. So this top one here, I started at, let's say, the 50% mark of the rotation, and I'm rotating it from one side to another. So if I take the second one out, you'll see it's one of the ones in the middle, the smaller ones. And all I've done between these 2 effects, they're the exact same effects, is I copy and pasted them, and I changed the direction. I used that flip inside the value curve there. Right here, I used this flip. So it reversed it from this end to this end, and it flipped it so that it started up here and then went down here. And that's how I got it to go to 2 different sides without having to rotate the buffer, because now I'm activating different locations for those. And then down here, then down below, I guess I could show you the rest of these. I added some zoom in and zoom out to them so that it looks like they're kind of breathing a little bit. And then I gave it a little bit of zoom quality so you didn't have that artifacting. And what else did I do? Down here on the X pivot point, all I did was I put a sawtooth on there, and I gave the sawtooth 4 iterations. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I manually drew that. You can go sawtooth. There's 4 iterations. And that's all I did with that. And that was on the pivot point. Oh, and I moved the X rotation to 105. So I copy and pasted that. I think that follows through to all of them. Maybe on the top two. Now the bottom 2, it's kind of similar. I did the same thing though. Instead of on the X pivot point, I did it to the Y pivot point. I changed it to 105, and I gave the sawtooth to the Y pivot point. So that gave me these 2 tall ones. If we delete these, you can see that's something a little bit neat, something interesting. You could play around with the buffer a little bit. And I'm going to answer a question in the chat real quick. Somebody said, how do you create your own color curves? I'm going to show you that here and give you a little example. You can right click on your color palette anywhere. And what happens is you have this menu comes up. It's called the color curve. There are some predetermined ones. You can create and load and export your own so that you can utilize them in the future. One of the ones that is most common is this rainbow one. We can select it, click OK. And now I can click update. If I click update, it doesn't look like RotoZoom wants to deal with it. It's kind of weird. Huh. I have something for you though on, and we'll do some layer blending. There we go. So that's what the color curve would look like on there. You could go in and I was really hoping that would work because I wanted to use persistent on that, and I'm not sure. That might be a bug. It would have been nice to hit persistent here and see some interesting things that, just dragging out the effect with persistent. You could also blur, bulk edit, blur, a little bit blurry, make it a little bit kind of oddballish. You could do a lot of really interesting things, but I'm kind of surprised that the color curve doesn't work very well with, oh, wait a second, this is the shapes effect. I bet you I have hold color check. Let me uncheck that. There we go. Ha. Now it works. So just again, just having some fun. I'm just playing with things. This is the sketch effect. I scribbled something out very, very randomly. I'll open it up. I mean, literally, this is the sketch effect that I drew. This is the path that I did a couple zigzags and bumps and big loops, and all I did was I applied the exact same sketch the top two to some specific roto zooms, just a rotation, and I added some. I did add some zoom quality because it wasn't coming out nice. Then on these bottom two, well, these two are the same. I think I flipped, or I gave it something different. Yeah, I flipped the rotation. So the two green ones, or no, the two pink ones are doing the same thing, but they're doing it in the opposite direction. And then I did a kind of a sawtooth from 0 to 50 back to 0, and that's on the green ones. So again, I didn't do anything crazy or fancy. I just set some simple settings. I just drew a scribble, and I did some layers. And is it attractive? You know, it's something to play with and have a little bit of fun with to try to get going. But just again, having fun and showing you that how it works. This is kind of interesting. I said earlier that the triangle doesn't have a rotation function in the ripple effect. While that might be different in the shapes effect, which we could go look at that real quick. So there is a rotation here in the shapes effect. If we change this to triangle, there is a rotation in there. So I could use the triangle in there and not have to use RotoZoom, that is. So, but the ellipse there, the rotation works just fine here as well. But we're doing something a little different. We're kind of manipulating what the buffer looks like, or what the effect looks like on the buffer. So back to this one originally. I thought this was fun. Nothing fancy here. Added some zoom quality, just a standard clockwise, and I think this one's a counterclockwise. Yeah, that's a counterclockwise. So nothing fancy. It's just a ripple effect. And what I wanted to show is how easy it is to create a preset effect. I have a set of presets that I call, where are you, RotoZoom? And I don't have a lot of them. I end up playing with different things, and this was a while ago that I did these, but I was obviously doing something with the zoom and the rotation. So that's as easy as it is. I'll show you how to open this up. Right, if you select your effects, you right click, effects preset, you select where you want them to be saved. If you want to save them on your main root directory, you can, but I have a group, and I'm going to save this as triangles. And that saves the effect so that you can recall it at a later time. So if we deleted it and we just double clicked on it, it would open it up, and there it is, and it's back. Anytime you save a preset effect, you can click on the layout, click on the save button, and that will save it in your XML document for your layout, so you never lose that. So I think that is as good as I can do with the RotoZoom tab. But I've run out of sliders. Unless the developers have seen something that maybe they'd like to add, I'm happy to play with it. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, by all means, go ahead and unmute the microphones, and we'll go ahead and get started with the Q&A and any questions on tonight's class. Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. I don't know if Rob's out there or not. Any questions? Any questions on RotoZoom? Any questions on anything? xLights related, hobby related?
Okay, I've got a question.
Is that Joel?
It is.
Joel, long time no see.
I know. How you doing?
Good.
If you can back up and go back to that effect that you said Keith just added a while ago. It's the on effect with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was playing around with it. I was like, oh, this is a good time to talk about that.
Now, if you make it an oversized buffer.
Oversize the buffer.
And then
and obviously I have this kind of, I'm going to reset that. So that's reset. That's if I put it down and put it there.
And then go to Z rotation
Mm-hmm.
and make it spin.
Oh, you got the fan effect,
Ah,
or
there
the
you go.
pinwheel, or the pinwheel, or the pinwheel. I thought it was really neat to do something a little bit different with it. Because there's different ways that you can perceive the color wash. So in this instance, actually, this is probably a better one. So now you've got a bullseye. So I thought that was neat. If you click it again, it reverses the bullseye, or I call it a bullseye. But I thought that was neat. I mean, you can come into the value curve and you can change the gradient to no gradient. And now you have perfect circles, you know, or the best circle that you can get from a matrix, right? So I thought that was rather interesting. And then this is that kind of pinwheel type thing that you said, and then you can reverse it the opposite, and then it's back to the on effect. So yeah, that's something neat that was added into to be able to utilize the value curves or the color curves on the colors. So I thought that was fun.
Cool. We need to submit a bug request. They spelled colors wrong.
I think they'll ignore that one, and we'll lose whether we like it or not. We're not going to win that one. So yeah, so a lot of fun with I use Roto Zoom a lot with a number of effects. I'm sure you guys see that. It's not a hard effect to figure out whenever you sit down and you like I said, just going through this was a nice little refresher for me. There's a lot of things that I don't utilize a whole lot. For example, I really don't utilize the Y and the X and the Y pivot points for the Z axis. Something I don't use a lot of. I do use the X and Y rotation, and I do use the pivot points for the X and Y. And it's random. It's not all the time, but it's something like, oh, I find something cool, and then it ends up becoming a preset effect, and I start using it a little bit more for that. So any other questions?
No questions, but just to confirm, didn't you do a video on color and
On the color curve?
on the color curves?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
I thought you did. I
did. It's been a long time. It actually I need to redo it. If I go up here,
the basics should still be the same.
I did do a video on the color curve. It was a while ago. It's probably been about 4 years. Value curves and color curves. So this video walks through, but this is from probably 2018. So, and there. Yep, there's the video. That's an old one because that's me in the living room as opposed to me in the office. So yeah, 2018 was the last one that I did. So I think that's the one functionality that's been added to the color curve is what I just showed you tonight. So that is definitely in order for a new video to be added. Another thing too, you saw that I used I searched for color curve, and the next thing that came up was value curves. Here, this video was a pretty good video on showing exactly how value curves work. I've done a ton of work over the years with, and this is probably from 2018 also. Yeah, it is. So I have, this is the color curve intro, and then this is the value curves. So they're a lot of fun. I bet you, where's the other one? So if if you wanted to learn about effects, I've got tons of videos on effects: spirograph, fill, curtain, wave, warp, kaleidoscope, creating a basic sequence, kind of thoughts and process over it. There's a lot in the archives, that's for sure. Come over here and search for value. Unlocking the value and value curves. This, I think, was 2019. There really hasn't been any major changes. There are a couple things that are rather interesting that were added into, unlocking the value and value curves. There have been a couple things added into value curves that weren't there in that video, but are still or they're the ability to be able to use them is there. So one of them was the timing track toggle, timing track fade, and timing track fade proportional. Those three are newer, but they're very much like the music, although they rely on having a timing track set. So every time it hits a timing mark, you set the timing mark to the track, or you set the timing track, and it will trigger either a toggle. It'll go from one setting to another. It will either fade from one, or value curve it, or curve it from one value to another. Or you have timing track fade proportional, which means it will start at the number you give it and it will decline it. So, or at least I think that's how that one goes. But those are, I do use those a little bit. Probably one of the biggest value curves that I tend to use would be on the brightness, and specifically whenever I'm working on like a beat track of some sort. I can come in, for example, let's say add a timing track, and I have a metronome, and let's go every 500 milliseconds. That's enough. And I put, let's say, get rid of that, the color wash on here, and I do a vertical fade, a horizontal fade. Let's add some sparkles. There we go. So and I have it fading between those three colors. Let's go back to there, blue. So white, blue, blue. Nothing fancy there. This is the color wash effect, vertical fade, horizontal fade, and you have your beat track. And that's one of the things that I'll like to do is go to the brightness value curve, and I will go and select a timing track fixed fade or fade fixed, and I will tell it look for whatever timing track I want it to follow. And the high would be 100. So full brightness is 100 on the brightness scale, and full off. You can make this any variable number. Maybe you don't want it fully bright. Maybe you just want it lightly pulsing. And then so every time it hits that specific timing mark, it's going to follow whatever I tell it to do. So that's a way to kind of get any effect. You can do that with any effect. You can apply that to the pinwheel. There's the pinwheel effect. Does the same thing. So that's the value in using a value curve, and it has nothing to do with music. It's just going with the timing mark that you kind of set up. But that's a lot of prepping. You have to be ready for that. You kind of have to know when to use it too, and when not to overuse it. That's another thing. All right, any other questions? All right, well, Rob, I don't know where you're at, but we probably could say